What if I told you two people started with the exact same $100, but only one of them would ever see a million? Jake sat on the edge of his worn-out couch, the cushions caving in from years of use, the fabric thinned and frayed in spots. The morning sunlight cut through his apartment blinds in narrow stripes, casting shadows over an empty pizza box on the floor and a pile of laundry he'd been ignoring for 3 days. His phone buzzed with a notification. Payday. $532 deposited into his account. He exhaled deeply and cracked a tired smile. Finally. It had been a rough 2 weeks. The last few dollars in his account had barely carried him through. Now, with $100 in physical cash, money he'd just pulled from the ATM, he felt momentarily powerful. Not rich, but less trapped. And for Jake, that fleeting sense of freedom was enough to justify spending it quickly. He opened a food delivery app, scrolling with one thumb and sipping black coffee with the other. Nothing fancy, just a large pepperoni pizza and some garlic knots. $24 with tip. He justified it immediately. I deserve this, he mumbled to no one. It was his ritual. Payday meant indulgence, no matter how minor. The dopamine hit of ordering food, seeing it arrive, biting into something hot and cheesy, it masked everything else, if only for an hour. By the time the delivery driver left, Jake was already unboxing the food like it was a gift from the universe. He ate with the TV on, distracted and relaxed, pushing the thought of his remaining bills to the back of his mind. $100 didn't go far anyway, so why stress about stretching it? An hour later, scrolling through Instagram, Jake saw an ad for sneakers. On sale, down from $95 to $60. He clicked without hesitation. His old sneakers were fine, but these looked newer, flashier, more in. He imagined himself walking into the bar that night, friends noticing the shoes, nodding in approval. They're clean, someone would say. It was enough of a fantasy to justify the tap. $60 gone. Added to the pizza, and now he had barely $16 left in cash. Later that afternoon, his friend Tony texted, "Bar later." Jake didn't think twice. Of course. He never said no to that. Nights out were the few times he felt normal, like his job and his overdraft fees and his half-broken coffee maker didn't matter. He Ubered downtown, another $10 gone, and bought 2 rounds of drinks before the tab hit $20. By the end of the night, Jake had $5 left and a splitting headache, but he had laughed a lot, joked around, and forgotten his problems for a few hours. That had to count for something. Meanwhile, across town, Eli was sitting at his modest desk, a space he had cleared in the corner of his studio apartment. His room was clean, minimalist, a few plants, one bookshelf, a corkboard with a handful of index cards pinned in neat rows. Each card had handwritten goals. Read 1 book/week. Launch online course by October. $1,000 emergency fund. Today, like Jake, he also held $100 in his hand. But unlike Jake, he wasn't thinking about spending it. He was strategizing. He treated that $100 like it was his last, and his first. Every dollar had to count. Eli walked to the library instead of paying for an Uber. The walk was 25 minutes, just long enough to think. He mentally calculated how much he'd saved in ride fares this month. Around $46. He opened his notes app and typed it under a line that read, "Saved versus spent." It wasn't obsessive, it was intentional. He'd been raised in a home where money was always tight. His parents fought about bills, used payday loans to make rent, and never talked about investing or saving. Eli had watched What Not to Do for 2 decades. That memory stayed with him. At the library, he browsed the finance section. He picked up a copy of The Psychology of Money, a book he'd seen recommended online. He spent an hour reading a few chapters, then went home and bought a used copy online for $8. He also purchased a short video course on skill building, freelancing for beginners, for $20 on a discount site. It wasn't flashy or instantly profitable, but it was a seed. A step. The rest of the money he logged into his budgeting app and moved into his Freedom account, a savings account he had opened 6 months ago for a single purpose: leverage. Not emergency cash, not vacation money, leverage. For investments, courses, small business ideas. Anything that would help him stop trading hours for dollars. Eli sat at his desk that night, writing. Not journaling about his feelings, documenting what he learned, what he noticed. He wrote, "Poor mindset equals spend now, escape later. Rich mindset equals delay now, build forever." It hit him how easy it was to fall into the instant gratification trap. The world encouraged it. Ads, friends, culture. Treat yourself, they said. But Eli saw that treating yourself today often meant betraying your future self. He looked around his apartment. Nothing expensive, but everything functional. He didn't feel deprived. He felt focused. Jake, on the other hand, woke up late the next morning with a headache, an empty wallet, and a growing anxiety in his chest. He checked his bank app and saw less than $20 available. Rent was due in 4 days. His phone bill was overdue. He opened his fridge, a single can of beer, ketchup, and half a box of stale cereal. He closed it without taking anything out. Scrolling through his text messages, he ignored one from his landlord and another from his mom asking if he needed anything. He didn't want to admit that he did. Back in his apartment, Eli was already halfway through his course. He had taken notes, researched freelance platforms, and made a to-do list to complete his profile. He had no clients yet, no money made. But he felt rich, not in cash but in control. He had momentum. The $100 wasn't a magic wand, but it was a catalyst. He didn't envy Jake or anyone flashing money on social media. He knew what those people never posted. The credit card debt, the emptiness, the fear of running out. He wasn't chasing appearances. He was building something real. As Jake walked to work that day, earbuds in, he glanced into the windows of stores he couldn't afford to shop in. He envied the people inside, the ones with nice clothes, coffee in hand, seemingly stress-free. He thought money was just something that happened to people. You either got lucky or you didn't. He didn't realize he'd already had multiple chances to change his trajectory and had spent each one chasing comfort instead of growth. Eli, on the other hand, brewed coffee at home and added another index card to his board. Sell first freelance gig by next Friday. It was a stretch goal, but it gave him direction. And direction, he had learned, was more valuable than motivation. Motivation faded. Direction kept you moving even when it didn't feel good. That day, both Jake and Eli earned the same paycheck. Both had $100 in cash. But by sunset, one had nothing but regret and a receipt for sneakers he didn't need. The other had an online course, a used book, a savings account, and a strategy. Neither man became rich or poor in a single day. But a single day revealed everything about the trajectory they were on and the mindsets they were living by. Eli wasn't smarter than Jake. He wasn't born with more privilege or better luck. The difference was simple. Jake saw money as a ticket to spend. Eli saw it as a tool to grow. Jake needed relief. Eli needed freedom. And freedom, Eli believed, was purchased not with dollars, but with discipline. By the end of the week, Jake was again looking forward to the next payday, already thinking of what he'd buy. Eli, meanwhile, had sent out his first proposal to a client. It wasn't big, just a $50 gig. But it was his. He had turned $20 and some effort into a skill, and that skill into an opportunity. And that, he thought, was how wealth begins, not in grand gestures, but in tiny, intentional steps no one else sees. The $100 was never the point. It was the test. What if every dollar you spent was a vote for the person you'd become? Jake rubbed his eyes and groaned, the hangover setting in deeper with each passing second. His phone was buzzing. 3 missed calls from his boss. He was late, again. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, the cold floor slapping against his feet like punishment. His head pounded, his mouth was dry, and the sneakers he bought just last week lay in the corner like silent critics. It wasn't just about being late. It was the realization that once again, nothing had changed. Another Friday had come, the money had gone, and the cycle continued. It was always a version of the same script: relief, release, regret. That morning, Jake skipped breakfast and caught the bus, headphones in, hoodie pulled low. He didn't want to talk. Didn't want to think. Just make it through the day. At work, his manager pulled him aside. Not to yell, but worse, to express disappointment. Jake nodded, apologized, promised to do better. But even as he said it, he knew he had no plan to actually change. Not yet. Eli, on the other hand, was already halfway through his Saturday morning client call. His third freelance project this month, a small copywriting contract for a wellness brand. They wanted emails. He delivered results. He'd studied psychology, buyer behavior, email funnel structures. Not in college, not in a class, on YouTube, in books, in late-night notes while his friends scrolled TikTok. He hadn't just taken gigs. He had built a service, a reputation, a tiny digital footprint that was already beginning to snowball. After the call, he reviewed his earnings. $150 from his first gig, $200 from his second, $275 from this one. Not fortune money, but foundational money. The kind that built skills, confidence, proof. He hadn't touched most of it. It sat in a separate account, labeled Freedom Stack. He was up to $700. His job still paid the bills. But this was different. This was leverage. Jake's day crawled by. At lunch, he opened his banking app, $12.76. He thought about payday, still 4 days away. He skipped lunch and bought a $1.29 soda instead. Sugar and caffeine, cheap fuel for a tired soul. On the way home, he scrolled through his phone again, this time searching how to make money online. He didn't expect much, but the pain was loud enough now. Something had to change. He clicked on a video. It was full of buzzwords and promises: passive income, drop shipping, affiliate marketing. It sounded cool. He added it to watch later. But deep down, he knew he didn't need more hacks. He needed more habits. Meanwhile, Eli had begun writing a short ebook, not for money, not yet, but for practice. The broke mindset versus the builder mindset. He didn't know if anyone would read it, but that wasn't the point. He was building proof of work. Something real. Something that lived beyond the next paycheck. He added a quote to the intro. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. It stuck with him because he'd seen it play out in real time. Jake's system was survival. Spend to feel better. Borrow to get by. Work to recover. Repeat. There was no plan. No margin. No growth. He thought his job was the problem. Or maybe his city. Or the rent. But the truth was harder. His habits were rigged for stagnation. Eli's system was tiny steps, repeated daily. Learn. Build. Launch. Reinvest. Not flashy, but powerful. He tracked his time now, not because he was obsessed, but because he was intentional. He gave himself 3 hours a day for skill stacking, writing, reading, applying. The rest of his time? Still his. He watched shows. Hung out with friends. But it all came after the work. Not before. Sunday morning, Jake stayed in bed until noon. Not because he was lazy. Because he felt defeated. He watched a video on budgeting, but clicked away halfway through. This is for people who already have money, he thought. He didn't realize the budget wasn't the destination. It was the lifeboat. Eli, at that same hour, was on a Zoom call with a small mastermind group, other freelancers just starting out. They shared tips, wins, failures. One person had just landed their first $500 project. Another had been ghosted by a client. They laughed, supported each other, held each other accountable. It was free. No coaching gurus. Just peers climbing together. That evening, Jake texted Tony again. Bar. He paused, then deleted it. He thought about the last 3 nights. The cash gone. The sleep lost. The guilt after. He sat there, staring at the screen. No messages came in. No one noticed. No one missed him. He felt alone. But he also felt a flicker, something new. Not shame. Not fear. Awareness. The first spark of change. Eli uploaded his first lead magnet, a free email template bundle for small businesses. He posted it on LinkedIn, added a link to his freelance profile. 0 likes. 1 download. But that 1 download? It meant the system worked. Even if slow, it worked. He didn't celebrate with a drink or a shopping spree. He celebrated by outlining version 2. Monday came. Jake made it to work on time. He brought his own coffee. Ate a homemade sandwich at lunch. Small things. Unremarkable. But they felt different. For once, he wasn't bleeding money. That night, he opened a Google Doc and wrote, "Things I wish I knew about money." It wasn't for anyone else. Just him. A list of mistakes. Lessons. Lies he believed. Maybe it would become something. Maybe not. But for the first time, he wasn't numbing. He was noticing. Eli hit $1,000 in freelance revenue that week. It wasn't enough to quit, but it was enough to see the path. He'd proven he could earn beyond his job. He wasn't talking about escape anymore. He was building it, piece by piece. Jake checked his calendar. Payday was coming. But this time, he wasn't excited to spend. He was curious what he could keep, what he could use to start something. He Googled best skills to learn with $50. He wrote down 3: copywriting, video editing, web design. He didn't pick one yet, but he picked a direction. The real gap between Jake and Eli had never been intelligence or effort. It was awareness. Jake had been walking in the dark, reaching for comfort like a flashlight. But now he'd found something better. Clarity. Eli saw it too. He wasn't special, just consistent. The world didn't reward potential. It rewarded proof. And proof was built quietly, while everyone else was scrolling, partying, or pretending. He didn't want to be viral. He wanted to be undeniable. By the end of the month, Jake had $87 saved. The most he'd ever held on to in a single month. He felt something he hadn't felt in years: control. He didn't spend it. He didn't celebrate. He just looked at it and thought, okay, let's see what happens if I do this again. Eli bought a domain name, started building his own website, his own brand, something he could control. No more platform fees. No more waiting. Just direction, speed, and focus. They were two people starting in the same place. One had spent $100 to feel rich for a day. The other used that same 100 to build something real. The difference wasn't money. It was mindset. And mindset, Eli had learned, compounds faster than any investment. You don't have to become someone new overnight. You just have to start behaving like the person you want to become today. If you've ever said, "I want more," this is your sign to prove it. Start small. Start now. But whatever you do, start.